Welcome to the SwimSwam podcast. I'm your host, Coleman Hodges. Joining me today, Olympic gold medalist, SwimSwam co-founder Mel Stewart. And joining us today, we've got a very special guest. He is a three-time world champion, Pan-Pacific champion, Commonwealth Games champion, Olympic medalist. And now he just lifts weights and it gets huge. Please welcome James Magnussen. James, how's it going, man?
Yeah, good guys. Thanks for having me on.
I think the most important question you got to start off with is what's your Instagram handle, right?
My Instagram is james.magnussen, so it's pretty simple to find. I don't think there's too many James Magnussens out there.
You know what, guys? If you're out there, you need to press pause. You need to go to his Instagram account. This guy's jacked. Buff. He's all he does. I don't know if you're swimming or not, but you're definitely lifting weights.
Yeah, that's right. I actually a part owner in a gym equipment company, so it's like a bit of a thing that I do. I guess I'm the face of the company, so I need to be in good shape all the time.
That's an easy way to do it, man. So what's this company called? How did you get involved in the gym equipment business?
Yeah, so it's called Habitual Equipment. So it is based in Australia at the moment, but basically some friends and I noticed that there was a bit of a gap in the market. Gym equipment was really hard to come by. And then when COVID hit, it turned into like steel gold. Nobody could get it. It was so expensive. So we're like, let's fill the gap in the market. Let's do this thing. I've been, in and around high performance gyms since I was like 15 years old. So I'm pretty well versed in the industry, and I knew a bit about designing and developing gym equipment, and we all put our heads together and started a company, and it's been a wild ride.
So entrepreneur and silver linings with the pandemic, it's blowing your business up. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, that's correct. Most people were sort of struggling during COVID. We actually, made the most of it and really benefited from the whole experience. And I think that was something I saw with businesses, particularly in Australia. That's what I was exposed to. Some businesses struggled because they weren't able to adapt and change with the times, and other businesses, moved into e-commerce or moved online or did things differently and really thrived. And I think it was a real attitude thing of, how do you view this pandemic? Do you see it as an opportunity? Do you see it as a setback? Do you, wallow in pity, or do you go out there and try and make things happen? And I made a concerted decision to attack it and try and make the most of it. And here we are.
It's habitualequipment.com.au. Doing you a solid.
Correct.
Folks, you need to go there and check it out. We have to drop that before we swim nerd it up. Okay, so we got to say this in the front end. And I was arguing with my wife about this. We saw you at Austin City Limits, the music festival, ACL, who, by the way, was at the time may have still been owned by a U.S. Olympian, Bill Stapleton. Another shout out to another Olympian. And but we saw you. And I was like, I thought it was at a distance. And my wife's Tiffany. She's like, no, he was standing right behind us. Coleman, what's your story? What is your memory of that moment?
I gotta give it to Mel. I think we were at enough of a distance to where you were like, is that James Magnussen? And I was like, no, dude, why would James Magnussen be here? And you're like, I think that's James Magnussen. We turn around and walk 10 feet back, and we're like, holy crap, that's James Magnussen.
There's like 2% of humanity that is like a super face identifier, and they could like work for the CIA, this sort of intelligence apparatus of the United States, this large evil organization. I would definitely be one of them. I saw the crest of your face, and I'm like, that's Maggie. I'm telling you, that's him. And we ran up to you, and you were nice enough to say hello, have a photo with us, and basically you made our day.
Yeah, no, that was crazy. It's such a small world. I remember it pretty clearly that you guys coming over, and I was actually, so that was post Rio Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'd been in LA, then Las Vegas. We'd done like 5 days in Vegas, then come straight to Austin. I think that was the second or third day of the festival in Austin. And then we ended up going from Austin to Cancun and spent a week in Cancun. So that was a wild time.
I don't know what's wrong with our lives, Coleman. We're not living this way. What I don't live this way. What's I feel like I'm failing at life.
That was not my post-Olympics experience. That sounds like a super fun trip though. Did you guys just come to Austin for the festival? Cause like, you know, you talk to Australians and a lot of them talk about, you know, they take a big US trip at some point in their younger lives, and like LA, duh, Vegas, duh, like Austin, maybe not so obvious. Did you guys just come for the festival or did you do other stuff?
No. Yeah. It was an absolute fluke. So one of my mates, his brother had been to Austin before, and he spoke about 6th Street and how fun it was and how good the partying was. I'm not sure. I think I spoke to one of the swimmers from Australia who'd gone to college there or something. I can't remember who it was. And they said, man, you got to go to Austin. It's the best party town. Anyway, we turn up to Austin, completely unbeknownst to us, there's a music festival on. And we just booked tickets on the day. Like, we had no idea. We'd never heard of Austin City Limits. And the first night we went out there, I think it was a Thursday night, and the town was pumping. I was like, man, is it like this all the time? And some guy was like, well, Austin City Limits is on this weekend. I was like, okay, like didn't really know what it was. Then we went home and looked it up. We're like, oh man, Kendrick Lamar and Kygo and like all these guys are in town this weekend. I'm like, what a fluke.
You're living right with God. Something's going on. So you just show up in Austin and oh, by the way, Austin City Limits is happening. ACL is happening. You start a business and a pandemic happens, but it turns out it was good for your business. And so, you know, suddenly you've got a thriving business. I've decided that I'm going to come. We're going to come live with you because we need some of that good luck. We're just going to rub you. I'm not going to say where. We'll rub you on top of the head. Good luck. And we'll leave you alone.
Yeah. It was pretty funny, actually. We got on the plane in, I think it was in LA, and we're flying to Austin. It's like, man, there's a lot of like young people here, and everyone was like drinking at the airport before they got in our plane and stuff. I was like, damn, Austin is lit. Like, this place must go off. And we were still just completely oblivious to the whole thing.
You see the white beard? You see this?
Yeah.
I'm 29 years old. That's what the city's done to me.
Austin, I mean, pre-pandemic, obviously, but I mean, still, you can go out to bars here still, and like people are out, and I mean, it is Texas. Take that how you will, but yeah, it's like Austin parties. Put it that way.
Yeah, and funny thing about Austin, actually, so we're in Austin, and I knew the Texas Longhorns swim team was there and stuff like that. I think Eddie Reese is the coach there.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I thought, and I'm with my mates from high school, so they're not that into swimming. I was like, there's a really good swim team. Let's go check it out. So we get an Uber to the college, and we just randomly walk into the pool, and they were training and stuff, and I didn't even say I was there. I just went and sat in the grandstand and watched some training and stuff. Nobody saw me there, and I just kind of checked it out for a bit, looked around the facility, and actually one of the people that worked there came and said, are you guys here for training, or are you part of the college? And we're like, no, we're from Australia. They're like, oh, sorry, you're going to have to leave, and they kicked us out. And I never spoke to any of the swimmers or Eddie Reese. Nobody knew I was there. I just went and kind of checked it out and saw what was going on.
So Coleman Eddie was my Olympic coach years ago. Eddie's been around for a long time. Eddie is, if Eddie had known you were there, Eddie would have probably brought you down, sat you down on deck, talked your ear off, put you in the water. Hey, why don't we get in and just do some time trials? He would have loved you up. And probably said, hey, why don't you be a volunteer coach and just stick around for another week? I'll feed you. That was So here's the thing. That was an opportunity loss. I'm just telling you. Negative. There's a negative.
I think potentially Jimmy Fagan was there at the time, as well, who was one of my competitors. I know him pretty well. You know, we've been on podiums and stuff together, but I may have bumped him at a pub or a bar one night as well. But yeah, kind of Eddie didn't know I was in town, and I just sat there and watched, which was pretty cool.
That's
Definitely going to tell Eddie as soon as we see him.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. So what other pools have you snuck into? Now I got to know. Did you do this in every American city that you went to?
No, that's probably the main one. I mean, we went and did a training camp in Auburn, in the lead up to the Rio Olympics. Brett Hawke kind of hosted us at Auburn. We stayed there and trained there. I went and did a training camp at Boulder, at the university there. I can't remember what year that was, but we wanted to go and train at altitude. So we stayed. I actually had a mate who's a pro cyclist, and he lived in Boulder. So we went and stayed at his house and trained at the university there in Boulder. So I've spent a little bit of time in the States and trained at a few different college pools, but never with the college coaches, or most of the time without the local athletes and stuff knowing that we were there. So incognito. Well, in Hawaii, I went to Hawaii as well at the university there for about 3 or 4 weeks in the lead up to the London Olympics.
London, where did you run into Mappiandi?
No, actually, funny story about this pool. So the coaches there was some Australian connection. I can't remember what it was. And everybody at this pool told me that Alexander Popov had pushed a sub 50 100 freestyle at this pool at the Hawaii University. And keep in mind, his PB was probably like 49 low off a dive. I was like, oh, that is insane. They're like, no, he did it in Speedos. And so we were there for about 3 weeks. And I think across that 3 weeks, I must have done 4 or 5 time trials, because I was like, I'm going to beat this damn record that Popov set in the 90s or whatever it was. And I went, like, the first time I did it, I was like 50.8. I think the last one I did across the 3 weeks, I went 50.1 push in training in Speedos, like just in training togs. And I didn't get it. And then a few of the coaches came over at the end and they're like, man, that was insane. We've never seen anyone push 100 freestyle that fast in training. I was like, oh, but Popov, the record. They're like, man, you're kidding. Like, the guy's PB was only faster than that. He could have pushed 52, maybe 51 at best. I was like, oh my God, I've been stewing on it all week. I was like, I can't beat this damn Popov record. Like, I know that I can swim faster than him. And it just stressed me out that whole camp. And then the coaches told me at the end that it was just a G up, that he'd never done it.
Oh,
that's cruel.
I'm trying to find his personal best time, because if you got it wrong, the swim nerds will just come after us.
Yeah. I might have been like 48 mid-ish, I guess.
It was a 48. He was a 48, because Mappiani was what, 48.4 in 1988. Popov was faster. So we can leave it. We can leave it there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's still pretty epic. What was the training camp at Auburn like? Were you guys still just training with the Aussies, or did you guys intermingle with anyone who was there?
Just Aussies. Yeah. So we took the whole Australian team there. All the coaches, all our staff. We kind of took over the whole area. But we weren't allowed in the football gym. No one was allowed to go in the football gym. We couldn't see what was happening in there. But it was, I think it must have been break time for students, because there wasn't many students around. The town was actually pretty quiet at the time. So we didn't really see any of the other swimmers. And the American team was probably at that time in camp as well, preparing for the Olympics, I'd say.
I think unless it's a football game, Auburn is always pretty quiet. That town's pretty small.
Yeah. There was some interesting characters cutting about, that's for sure.
I think it'd be a tough place. It's pretty, but it'd be a tough place to live.
Yeah, I reckon so.
Yeah.
Do we need to dive in and swim nerd this up? Do we need to we need to chlorinate this thing, or we're going to get called out?
We're dovetailing into it. So these are some epic training camp stories. I know. Did you guys do the relay camps when you were on Team Australia? Because I've talked to, like, Clyde Lewis, Mac Horton, and they say that the relay camps are really where it's at for you guys.
Yeah, kind of. So we did them a little bit earlier in my career. At the time, we had like Eamon Sullivan, Matt Target, Michael Klim made like a little comeback there at one stage. Ian Thorpe made a bit of a comeback, a bit of a cameo appearance. They never actually swam in our relay team, but they kind of did a couple of those camps and stuff. They were pretty cool. We would separate our relay camps, so they'd be men's 4x100 camps only, no distance swimmers allowed. And they were my favorite camps because we'd just go like head to head on heaps of racing and stuff, compare all our skills, our starts, our turns. And for me, coming through as a young swimmer, as like an 18-year-old when I first made the Australian team, that was probably where I did the bulk of my learning. And I guess for older swimmers, they start to, like, in the later years in your career, you race fast in big competitions and big meets, but you don't always swim fast in time trials or around training and stuff. But as a younger swimmer, you're good to go like 5 days of the week. So coming through as an 18-year-old, we go on these relay camps mid-season, and like I'd get up on the blocks next to like Eamon Sullivan and stuff and be beating him in time trials. And as a young guy, you'd like layer up a bit and stuff like that. And I used to love it. Coming through on those camps, it was really good fun.
I mean, what was the best time you dropped it at one of those camps? Do you remember?
So, I mean, some of the best stuff I did at those camps. So we do like 50s push. So they'd line us all up and we do like, say, 350s on like a big rest push. And I could push sub 23 seconds. So I'd push like 22.8 or 22.9. And that was like some of the most impressive stuff I ever did. And everyone would be like chest beating and stuff. And I'd do those sub 23s, breathing twos at 100-meter stroke rate. And some of the guys would go like hypoxic at like 50-meter stroke rate, and I'd still get it done, breathing twos. And that was some of the most impressive stuff that I used to do at those camps.
I have a really dumb question. Michael Klim, did he try to swim freestyle or experiment with doing butterfly kick, dolphin kick with his freestyle? Did he do that like in the last 10 meters of his, what? I know he did something like that. It certainly looked weird, but a lot of people talked about it. And it's, I'd like to know if somebody eyes on the ground was there. What was he doing?
Yeah, it was last like 10, 15. So when he'd hit that wall of like peak lactic acid and he struggled to keep that kick rate up, he'd switch it to butterfly kick. I don't know, I think he toyed with it for about a season or two. I mean, it worked all right for him. He was probably swimming like 48 point at the time. So it worked pretty well for him. But I don't know. I think for me personally, to throw my rhythm and my timing out. But I think he did it when he went hypoxic at the end as well. So it was probably a little easier. He didn't have to get that breath in. But yeah, weird theory. But he was an insane butterfly kicker. Like, he was really good underwater. And he came from a butterfly background as well a bit. So it worked for him, but pretty unique. I don't think it would work for many people. Maybe a Caleb Dressel or something it might work for, given his background.
Maybe. But, before we get too deep into this, let's, I would like to frame this entire conversation, maybe through a certain lens. And I'll preface it by saying this, because it could go a negative way or a positive way. I think in the United States, with its vast population and resources, we have always been enamored. There's a little bit of a love affair because we look at the island nation of Australia and we know how small the population is, and you guys bring it every time. You really do. I mean, if you think about it, if you took Orange County in Southern California, I think the population of Orange County, California is comparable to, or maybe slightly bigger than the entire population of Australia. Is that in the back of your head when you were competing against Team USA? Were you thinking, we're pulling from 30 million people?
Yeah, sometimes. I think our coaches, particularly in years gone by, use that to like pump us up. They're like, we're actually 20 million people in here in Australia, and they say, we've got 20 million people and we're punching above our weight, and it's something that we're proud of. We're similar to that in most sports that we compete in on a world stage, like rugby, which you guys are getting into now. We've had world champions in tennis, surfing, golf. We punch above our weight. But sport here is more of a religion. Sport is a very serious thing in Australia. And I'm not sure if you guys have spent a lot of time down here or not, but swimming, it's starting to fade a little bit now, to be honest, in Australia. But certainly when I grew up and through my career, swimming is like one of the sports. If you're an Olympic swimmer, or particularly in some events, it's like you're a rock star in Australia, and so it's taken very seriously. There's a lot of scrutiny, there's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of media attention, but it's a very important thing in Australia, and it's something that we take very seriously. So it's a blessing and a curse in some ways. Like I loved coming to America and being able to walk down the street or even go to the local pool. And like I said, I went to the pool in Austin, the home of the Longhorns, and nobody recognized me. Like, that's insane. If I was in that same music festival like Austin City Limits in Australia, I wouldn't be able to do what I was doing there and just hang out in the general area and just do my thing. There'd be people hassling me everywhere. So it's a good thing in Australia, but it's also a tough thing at times. But we do take pride in the fact that we punch above our weight, particularly in the Olympic Games.
There's a lot to unpack there. I just want to say this. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, James, that you've had to suffer through fame for your swimming, because that's something that we never had here. We had it with Michael Phelps. When Michael Phelps broke the scene, I'll be real fast. Before Michael Phelps, you knew to say that swimming was a hobby and not a real sport. And it was like this weird culture thing. We were proud amongst ourselves, but let's be honest, there was no ball. If you're not catching the ball, it's not real. Until Michael Phelps, I never stepped up and said, yeah, I'm a swimmer. But apparently you had to suffer through fame, and I'm very, very sorry. It sounds terrible. Sounds awful.
Yeah. See, if we had the equivalent in say high school or college of your swimming system, if you were good at swimming and you were good at football, you'd go for swimming. So that is the example in Australia.
Mind blown.
That's wild.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Coleman, we could have been cool.
We could have been cool. Should have just hopped the pond, gone to Australia in high school.
We're aware of that. So, that's just an interesting observation, but it's, okay. So it really is extraordinary how Australia has performed. And was that something that motivated you going, we're going to be competing against, the rest of the world, but also Team USA, and we're going to bring it. Did that motivate you?
I think my first years on the team, when I was like 18, 19 years of age, it did. But then I guess as a team, as an Australian team, we probably focus less on like this is a team thing and, it's us versus America. It becomes more of an individual thing, and you break off into your smaller coaching groups and your relay teams and stuff like that and speak about individual goals. And then, as you start to reach the pinnacle of at certain events, it becomes a very intrinsic thing of, all right, I'm here to do a job. What's my goals? What's my race plan? How do I execute this race plan? Because if you start going into these big events going, it's me against the world, you probably lose sight of the process. And personally for me, whenever I focused on process is when I got my best results. When I started focusing on outcomes and thinking about the bigger picture is when I had the potential of getting distracted and losing sight of what I needed to do to execute and to get that result.
And so I want to touch on, the first, you had some big meets in 2010, but one of your first biggest kind of breakout meets was World Champs in 2011 when at least I remember I was in high school and my coach was telling us the results. And he's like, some Australian dude let off in like 47.4 and they won the relay. What that your first world championships in 2011, leading off that relay, put me behind the blocks. What was that like for you?
Yeah. So leading into that world championships, I got pneumonia and, it was touch and go whether I was going to go to the world champs. So I hadn't really been training for a few weeks leading into it. I flew over separately to the rest of the Australian team. I flew over later. I wasn't one of the big names on the Australian team. I'd won our national championships and beat Eamon Sullivan for the first time, but there wasn't really a lot of expectation on me. My personal goals were to make the final at that world championships. And to just start to mix it. This was the first time I'd gone to a major international event and swum individually as well. So I had some different goals, but anyway, we got to the relay. The coaches chose not to swim me in the heats of that relay because I'd been so sick. They said, this guy's only got one swim in him. So put him in the final, not the heat. Our heat team didn't swim very well. We nearly missed the final. We ended up out in lane 2. And basically, I think part of the rhetoric for us going into that race was, we don't know where we're at. This is a building year for us. Let's just lead off James and see how he goes. He's this young guy. He hasn't done much international racing. Let's lead him off and see what happens. Anyway, we're in the marshalling area and you sit 1 through to 4. First swimmer at the front, the anchor swimmer up the back. And one of the Russian swimmers just stood up out of his chair and came across and stood in front of me in my chair, and he just started slapping himself and staring me down a bit. And I've come from a rugby league background in Australia. I don't know if you've ever seen or heard of rugby league. It's like a version of rugby union, a little rougher, a little more working class. And so I enjoy confrontation. I come from a contact sport. And so when he started somewhat trying to intimidate me, that G'd me up. And I stood up and sort of told him what I thought of him. I don't know if he understood it because I said it in English. He was Russian, but I basically told him to back off. And then I had Matt Target in the team with me as well. He's also a pretty alpha dude. And he got up and came over and we exchanged words with the Russians. And I don't know why the Russians picked me to have a bit of a crack at. But anyway, so Eamon Sullivan ended up coming and speaking to me. He was the calm head in the team. He's like, man, you need to calm down. You need to focus on your race. And I just said to him, I'm going to go out there. I'm going to smash these Russians. I'm going to smash these guys. And so we walk out to the blocks and I'm just like pumped up. And I'm usually a very relaxed guy. And I swim my best when I'm very relaxed. But on this one occasion, I was like, I'm going to smash these guys. And I also had on the blocks, it was my first ever time racing Michael Phelps. He was leading off for the Americans, and Alain Bernard was leading off for the French. And Alain Bernard was like someone, he'd won the 2008 Beijing Olympics. He was this big jacked guy. And I was like, man, I want to be big and jacked like Alain Bernard. I want to swim 100 freestyle. So I was just so excited for this race. Like I had these Russians. I wanted to smash the Russians. I was racing Michael Phelps for my first time, and I was racing Alain Bernard for the first time. And I remember Michael Phelps does the iconic slap before he races. So standing on the blocks just before they say, take your marks, I hear this big slap. And I'm like, damn, man, this is Michael Phelps. I was like, I'm going to do this thing. I'm doing it. And I just swam a really good race. Like I was just so G'd up for it. I went out quite easy the first 50, which I always do. I think I turned about 6th. And then I just switched the afterburners on that second 50 meters. And I could see as I was swimming, I'm like looking across underwater. I'm like, I'm beating Michael Phelps. I'm beating Elaine Bernard. I was just like living in a dream at the time. And it's probably top 2 or 3 races of my life, where everything just came nicely. I pulled away that last 15 meters. I got us a big lead. And then the rest of the swimmers in the team were able to capitalize on that, and we won. That was the first time we'd won a big relay event, probably almost going back as far as the Sydney Olympics, for us in Australia. And it was an early memory for me, was watching that Sydney Olympics team when Ian Thorpe anchored the team and they won that relay. So yeah, it was just a perfect storm. Like, I was so excited. I was so G'd up. Michael Phelps, Elaine Bernard, the Russians. And there's an iconic photo in Australia of myself, Matt Target, and Matt Abood. So Eamon was still in the water. He was anchoring it. And we're doing like this big scream and flex, and it looks like we're celebrating the race. We were actually turned facing the Russians, and we were flexing at the Russians, just going, yes, like, caught that. So they can take a bit of credit for that. They G'd us, and we got the result. And so that was really cool. That was one of my favorite moments as a swimmer that I look back on.
Is that a big breakthrough moment? Like, do you go back home and then it's like you're famous at that point? Is your life blow up? Yeah.
So after that relay, so swimming had gone through a weird phase in Australia where the TV rights had changed. And basically they pushed the swimming that year back. They were showing like reruns of like American sitcoms, and the swimming was being shown at like 10 p.m., 11 p.m. at night. So all of a sudden it had a little bit of a fall from fame in Australia. Anyway, that relay happens. And then I think 4 nights later, I'm going into the 100 freestyle final as the favorite. And so back in Australia, little did I know, things are blowing up. Everyone's going nuts. We've finally got a big name swimmer again. He's in the 100 freestyle. It's like the blue ribbon event. So they decide to put that 100 freestyle race on prime time. They interrupt all programs. They do a special cross, and it's my race, the only race of the meet for Australia, live on prime time in Australian television. So everyone's hyped for it. And then I win that 100 freestyle. Again, do the same thing, go out easy, come back really fast in that last 25 meters, blow past Cesar Cielo and some other big names in that event, and win the 100 freestyle. But I'm over in China, and the Chinese had a ban on like social media over there, so I don't have access to my Facebook. I didn't have access really to any emails or anything. I'd spoken to my agent once or twice, and he's like, yeah, things are big here, man. Like things are going well. And then I went away with my mum and my brother after the Shanghai World Champs to Beijing, just for a week, just to spend some time with my family. So I live away from my family here in Australia and don't get a chance to see them very often. So me and my mum and my brother go to China and go to Beijing, spend a week. And then we come back on the plane, and we fly back economy, like all's normal. Walk off the plane and walk out towards to get my luggage, and it's like 6 a.m. in the morning in Australia, and there's just this mass of people. I'm like, wow, the airport's pretty busy for 6 a.m. We walk out, and it's just camera crews, photographers, journalists, people with signs, people asking for autographs, people screaming. And pretty much from that moment onwards, like my life was never really the same. Things changed. So I can have a definitive point in my life, like before that World Championships and after that World Championships, being able to walk down the street, not being able to walk down the street. Like that was a defining point in my life. And things got very crazy there for a while after that World Championships, particularly the next 2 or 3 years. So it's something that I look back on fondly. But the thing that I loved about that World Championships was I didn't feel any pressure or expectation. I was so naive to what was happening. You know, I would have turned 20 by then, probably just turned 20, and just didn't even acknowledge how big of a moment that was until I realized I got off that plane and saw the ruckus back here in Australia.
No, you got something?
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No.
I was just going to say, dude, this is so good. This is so good. And we're running down on time. We've only gotten to 2011. We've got to bring you back and go through your history. Now, we got to, dude, you have to come back. You have to come back and tell us everything. I just want to say this. I just followed you on Instagram, and we can come back. We can do the rest of the history. Maybe you give us a workout on your habitualequipment.com.au, and we'll love you up. But we've got to get the rest of this, man, because we're down to a minute now.
So good.
Yeah. I've got a lot of stories.
All right, so that settles it. James, thank you so much for dropping in. You've mesmerized us for the last 40 minutes. We're running out of time, but we're bringing you back for Stories with Magnussen Part 2.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm keen to come back. I've actually just been asked to come and do a show in America as well, a TV show, a very well-known one. So I'm in talks at the moment with the producers of that TV show. It's on MTV, so maybe we'll have something exciting to talk about potentially in America in the future. Who knows? But I've got a lot of stories to talk about. So I'd love to come back on and chat with you guys. It's been really cool.
You've been listening to the SwimSwam podcast. Stay tuned for new episodes every week. You can take SwimSwam podcast on the go by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Look for links in the description below, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos as well.